中国奢侈品市场爆炸性增加，国际巨头纷纷登陆。
We looked at where we should have a concept store. We knew it would be China because China's our number one market.
它生产007最爱的钢笔，但当人们不再书写了，万宝龙又将如何生存？
Few people are using fountain pens these days. The company has not just survived, but also thrived during this, more than a century.
杨澜专访万宝龙亚太区总裁詹兆安，敬请收看。经济的飞速发展带来了中国奢侈品市场的爆炸性增长。截至2011年3月，中国境内奢侈品消费总额达107亿美元，占全球份额的1/4，成为全球第2大奢侈品消费国。根据国际知名咨询公司麦肯锡的报告，到2015年，中国将超越日本，成为全球最大的奢侈品市场。而根据世界奢侈品协会的估计，这一进程在2012年底就将完成。在全球经济低迷、西方市场萎缩的环境之下，国际奢侈品巨头们纷纷将目光对准中国，能否成功抢占中国市场，成为决定这些品牌未来增长的关键。2012年1月，源自德国的奢侈品牌万宝龙全球首家概念店在北京开幕，这也是万宝龙全球最大的精品商店。詹兆安，万宝龙亚太区总裁，1989年来到香港，20年来为多个奢侈品牌工作，负责亚太区业务，也见证了中国奢侈品市场的发展历程。
Where did this idea of concept store come from for Montblanc?
Okay, we looked at where we should have a concept store. We knew it would be China because China's our number one market. Up until that time, we had the largest store in Shanghai. It's about 640 square meters. Beijing is our largest market, slightly bigger than Shanghai in China, so that was the logical location. And when we said a concept store, we wanted to build something that was not just big, but something that was unique, that we give someone a different customer experience. And the idea was we would take the customer, the experience, and the brand, and they would become one in the boutique. So the customer would learn something, participate in the boutique experience, and get something out. We even looked and analyzed, why do people learn? People learn by hearing, by reading, by seeing, by touching, and being involved. When they're involved in something, they get much more out of it. So that was the concept when we started the boutique.
So what are some of the interactive experiments that you have installed in this store?
We have many interactive portions here. If you even come downstairs when you first enter the boutique, there's this huge movement. It's actually one of our movements we launched last year, the Metamorphosis. And you walk through the movement. So you sit there in the middle, you turn a wheel, and you're actually guiding yourself to walk through a movement. We have other ones where you come, I think you experienced that yesterday, our red carpet moment. Hopefully it was a bit glamorous. You walk down the red carpet, there's photographers, and at the end you take your picture in different scenes that you choose. We have other interactive ones like our Villeray watches, our set of the most expensive, where it talks about the history of the watch. It talks about the manufacturing of it, the craftsmanship. It even discusses the models. So we have a lot of interactivity throughout the boutique.
1906年，一位德国文具商以钢笔生产起家，创立了万宝龙品牌，以经典的白色6芒星标志为人所熟知。曾经拥有一支万宝龙钢笔是人们身份的象征。经过了100年的发展，万宝龙已经成为集钢笔、手表、珠宝、皮具等产品于一身的国际知名奢侈品牌。1992年，万宝龙进入中国，在经历最初的缓慢发展之后，2005至2008年，短短4年间，万宝龙在中国的销售额直线增长，而中国市场也一跃成为万宝龙在全球范围内最大的市场。
Well, I learned that in the year of 2008, China became the biggest market for Montblanc worldwide. But by the time of 2005, it was not even the 10th. How did you achieve such fast movement and progress?
Well, I think we laid the groundwork when we first started. Montblanc came to China in 1992. I joined the company in February '98. The first thing I joined as the regional for Asia was to go and take a visit of China. When I saw it was a disaster. We did
what was it like?
We did everything possibly wrong. First, the luxury market in China starts from the north and works south. So what did we do? We started from the south and distribution worked north. Then our distribution, where we were located, it was usually in a department store on the 6th or 8th floor in the stationery section, which is not our brand. So I made a plan. We called it the China Plan to Jumpstart China to our board. And I asked for a little bit of money to really start investing in China. And at that time, it was the Asian crisis. I was brand new to the company, so it took them a couple of months to make a decision in the affirmative. But just to give you a little bit about the spirit, I had an expat working for me in Singapore who was a friend. He called me up and said, Jim, what are you doing? This is your career. You're telling the board to spend money in China, but China's a poor country. And I asked him, I said, Andre, how many times have you been to China? He's never been there. I said, well, China is a great country and it will become great. And we really started this plan. First we're going to go into Beijing and Shanghai, but we couldn't get into first base because no one knew our brand at all. So
they refused you.
Completely refused us.
Flatly in your face.
But living in Asia for such a long time, I learned one thing is flexibility. So instead we went to Dongbei. We went to the northeast of China, and we opened our first shop in China in Harbin.
Wow.
So of all places. And from Harbin we went to Shenyang and Chongqing and then Dalian and then Anshan. And it was such a big success. We went back to the department stores in Beijing and Shanghai, and we got ground floor locations, and we really developed the shop-in-shop concept in China. Previously it was only sold in watch shops in generic counters.
So basically you said you laid a very good foundation during the first, say 8-10 years.
Sure.
But then what really triggered the biggest jump?
The biggest jump was when we took over the company. Up until 2005, it wasn't legal if your products were manufactured overseas, which all of ours are made in Europe, to run your own company. So we had agents. So when we established our company in Shanghai in 2005 and hired staff, we started a training department, we hired our own retail staff, and then it really took off.
万宝龙在中国的腾飞得益于整个中国奢侈品市场的增长。然而，1991年，詹兆安第一次来到中国之时，普通中国人对于国际奢侈品牌的认知几乎为零。
How do you see this market is going to? What's the direction it's going, and where are we at this stage?
It's an evolutionary cycle. When I first came to China in 1991, there were brands that didn't exist around the world. People weren't allowed to travel, so there was not a lot of outside information coming in. So you'd see, my name is Ciano, that could be a brand in China, and people thought it was successful.
Anything that sounds foreign, right?
Correct. And when people started to travel, they started to learn what were the true international luxury brands. So that was the first educational step. The second thing is when people in China, they're a little bit different than other consumers of luxury goods. They want to understand brands. So they try to read, to absorb what is a brand, the value, what is its positioning before they purchase. And now we see an evolution where people buy more expensive brands. They buy the top range, where in Europe or in the States, it's not necessarily so. So I think that as we go in the future, China will become larger and larger as a luxury market.
Of course, we can see that some of the consumers here are becoming more and more sophisticated in terms of how to buy those luxury brands and what they mean and how they match their own personalities or beliefs or values or whatsoever. But you can still see that one major motivation for the majority of Chinese consumers is to show off, maybe.
Sure.
And you find that the consumers are moving down to the economic and age ladders in this market to buy luxury goods. And
Correct.
what do you interpret that?
Well, I think that's again in the historical context. At one time, people were only allowed to have 3 colors of jackets. So when you've made it, and now you can differentiate yourself, you want to be able to show it. And it's the same thing that happens in Europe. In Europe, when people become wealthy, they want to display their wealth. Second, third generation will change, and that will be a natural evolution in China. But in Europe, they still like luxury, and the same thing will continue, I believe, in China.
In the area of fountain pen, Montblanc was the only and the number one.
Sure.
But then in the field of expensive watches and fine jewelries, your brand is not the only one.
Sure.
How would you differentiate yourself from your competitors?
Okay. Montblanc started watches in 1997. There's 300 Swiss watch brands in the world today. We are already the 22nd largest Swiss watch brand. How did we do it? We did it through innovation, through craftsmanship, and through running our own factories. Right now we have 2 factories in Switzerland. One is in Le Locle, Switzerland, the other one in Villeray. And we knew, since we were new to the industry, we had to continue with Swiss craftsmanship, but we had to be innovative. So like last year we launched the Metamorphosis watch, where it's one watch, it's mechanical. We've launched the Exo Tourbillon the year before, and we continue to innovate in the watch category. So people have been very, very receptive. In the year 2008, we launched Nicholas Riosec, a watch that was named after the founder of chronograph. So we've had tremendous success with our manufacturing with watches, and people really appreciate them. As far as jewelry, when we went into jewelry, we came up with our own cut. There's many jewelry brands, but not many have their own cut. There's a brilliant cut, there's a diamond cut, well, there's also a Montblanc cut, named after our brand, and it's in the symbol of our logo. And we continue to innovate. We have a design studio in Paris that designs all of our products, and we have manufacturing for the jewelry in Milan, Italy.
然而，与欧美发达国家相比，中国奢侈品市场却呈现独有的特征。中国的奢侈品消费者，无论是平均收入还是年龄，都远远低于西方国家，而他们在消费过程中表现出的报复心态，也为人所诟病。
So there is no a sense of irony or, when you look at this situation, when consumers come to you and say, give me the most expensive things, and I don't care about your brand stories, but just give me the most expensive ones. How do you react to that? Do you kind of look down upon that?
No, never. Anyone who pays my salary, I never look down upon. But I think like I said, it's an evolutionary process. You see people in China, the education levels are coming up, the experience level when they travel abroad are coming up, and that will change over time.
But how do you like the fact that more and more young people are joining the consumers?
No, that's fantastic.
And if I'm right, the average age for luxury goods consumers in China is something like 20 years younger than Europeans and Americans and even Japanese.
Yeah, it's
how is that
definitely
possible? Yeah.
I think because of the economic boom in China, people have become wealthy at a younger age. And you see that from probably 25 to 45 for our brand is where people buy the most goods. Where in Europe or the States it would be 35 to 55. So you see this going on. And it happens to because of the China economy.
So would you adjust the combinations of your products to suit these consumers?
No, we have a worldwide strategy, and what we've found is we don't make specific products for Chinese. We have an exception, but 99% of our products are European, because we found that Asians want to buy European products because they're European. Not because they look like they're trying to be Asian products.
You once said that the Chinese market will be the defining luxury goods market in the future, which, as I interpret, is that in the past, Chinese people were looking up to some of the European, cultured brands to be imported into this market. Do you think there is a possibility that Chinese culture and art can become one element in terms of defining the world trends?
Oh, I think definitely. China has 5,000 years of arts and culture, and people don't know it, but the West is trying to learn it. Today I even had an email from the US. They were trying to celebrate Chinese New Year to Chinese Americans. And they were trying to take our brand name and translate it into English, which doesn't work. But they're trying to learn. They're trying to grow. And you see that even in Europe. When you go into Europe in any of the boutiques, every major luxury brand has a Mandarin-speaking one. So they're trying to learn a little bit about the culture, right now about sales, but in the future it will be about arts and culture, because China has such a great history and tradition.
I see. I understand that you also developed a special design in the year of 2000, which is after the image of dragon, right? And we're coming into a dragon sign again. And your son was born then.
Yes, and that pen was the year of the dragon. We made 2,000 limited editions, which are sold out around the world, but it was because of him. So in '99, I knew we were having my first son, the fourth child, and I suggested we make the year of the dragon, and that worked quite well.
Do you keep that pen still?
I have the prototype, and I guess when he's 18 or maybe after university, he can have it.
Well, it may not be a good idea, but maybe we can develop a certain pen which use Chinese ink, as calligraphy instruments.
That would be great, or maybe a Yanglong pen.
下节请继续收看。
Is very close to bankruptcy, and you know how the life of a company, used to be a huge company, is affected by the outdating of its key application and technology. Few people are using fountain pens these days, but you also have to say no to some other proposals. How about developing, a clothes line or, a fashion line? 10年前，有人问我，怎样才能去诠释一个人和他的时代？为此，我们走遍世界去寻找答案。所在的地方是位于美国华盛顿，住在莫斯科后从白金汉宫里，一名叫做乔治·布什的。
I think every expectation that either he or I had then has been exceeded by what has occurred in the last 30 years. China now is our greatest lender of funds.
Going right through human history, we are a very violent species. But I still absolutely maintain that we can control these aggressive and violent tendencies.
If you'd said back when I was growing up, who's the most important country, Britain or China, people would have said at that point, Britain. You can't say that today.
Our aim must be to be the European pillar, to be more precise.
I can be very close to your country or my presidency of the international community. I can say that I am a real friend from China.
Глаза в глаза смотреть обязательно надо пережить человеку, работающему в социальной сфере.
Small, we're vulnerable. Whatever we can do, you can do and do better.
政治家に一番大事なことは自分の国のアイデンティティを知ること、それを大切にすること、それを国民にまた訴えること。
走过10年，杨澜访谈录与您相遇在世界的舞台。
就在今年年初，老牌胶卷生产厂商柯达公司申请破产，成为又一个被新技术淘汰的商业帝国。而随着电脑的普及，人们的书写习惯彻底改变，以钢笔生产起步的万宝龙又将如何生存下去？
What I thought about when I learned the news that Kodak is very close to bankruptcy, and you know how the life of a company, used to be a huge company, is affected by the outdating of its key application and technology. And when we're talking about the brand of Montblanc, it was started in 1906 as the company for fountain pen. And few people are using fountain pens these days. And how is the heritage carried through? And the company has not just survived, but also thrived during this, more than a century.
I think it's important when you look at any company is to look at the strategy of the company. And you have to talk about the brand values. For Montblanc, we make the best fountain pens in the world. But it's not the technical use of the fountain pen. It's really what it represents. We always say it's a piece of jewelry. It's a piece of jewelry that happens to write. So people still buy Montblanc fountain pens for themselves or for their loved ones for that emotional attachment. And it's quite important to develop that emotional attachment in a business. To keep current, to keep fresh, because people don't change. Technologies change, but people's base emotions stay the same.
Do you still use a fountain pen yourself?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day. I find when I write, I'm more creative than when I type. I don't know what that is, if it's something where it's connection between the brain and the hand, like Aristotle, or something that's built into people. But I think if you even try to write with the fountain pen versus type, you'll have a different type of creativity.
when I write poems.
Yeah, that's great.
But how about emails? You know, people like us are dealing with hundreds of emails every day.
Right.
And of course, you will use a computer, your iPhone, your cell phone, and so on and so forth. When do you use your fountain pen?
I think that's an emotional
to sign a contract, of course.
Oh, definitely to sign it, and even to write different memos if I want to write something creatively, and maybe difficult memos. Also on the positive side, if someone sends you an SMS says, I love you, your husband sends it to you, I love you, or if he writes you a long letter expressing himself with a fountain pen, it has a different meaning.
Yes.
The message is the same, but the delivery is completely different and the emotions are different.
And of course we can keep that.
Of course.
You know.
尽管万宝龙试图唤起人们对书写艺术的热情，但是面对钢笔市场的萎缩，上世纪90年代开始，在当时的总裁诺伯特带领下，万宝龙开始进行多元化战略转型，正式进军皮具、手表、珠宝、香水等多种领域。如今，手表已经成为了万宝龙市场最快的增长点。
If you can elaborate a little bit on this brand message evolvement during the past 14 years, how would you put them into stages?
When we first started, we were writing instruments, and everyone knows us still as the writing instrument brand. And we talked about the art of writing, because that's all we were. Obviously, when we went into leather in 1992, it's more of a natural fit, at least small leather goods. And then we expanded in 1997 into watches. And watches really is not the art of writing. So we really talk about a life refined and how we're moving into a different type of lifestyle for luxury. You know, we stand for intelligence just by the writing culture and what it means to mankind and to history. And we develop that way. So the brand itself, even internally, we want to develop people and have people grow, people learn about arts and culture. So it's a great environment.
But you also have to say no to some other proposals. For example, I believe there were people approaching you saying, how about developing, you know, a clothes line or, you know, a fashion line like that?
And that goes back to, I guess, your first question about strategy. You have to know your strategy and you have to be consistent and clear. We're great manufacturers of hard goods. In fact, for men's luxury goods, we're probably the #1 hard goods manufacturer already today worldwide. And we do it well. But we're not into soft goods or we're not into fashion. It's kind of, we're not embarrassed to say we're not into fashion. We do it on purpose. We try to make timeless designs. So if you look at the Meisterstück, it first came out in 1924 and it's still current today. So we want to promise our customers that we make products that can pass from one generation to another. And if we go into fashion, you really can't do that.
下节请继续收看。
Nowadays, we see most of the luxury brands are being closely associated with arts and culture. What makes you unique? Also, there are other parts of this country which are less developed, and there are people who are struggling for life. How do you relate to them, and how does this brand relate to the progress of the society as a whole?
这里记录的是一个人和他的时代。
1946年，中国第一位原子物理女硕士王光美，放弃去美国读博士的机会，离开北平，奔赴延安，第一次见到了刘少奇。此时，季羡林刚刚从德国回到北平，成为北京大学教授，继续潜心研究梵文和吐火罗文。1982年。 季羡林回到母校济南一中参加校友聚会，不远处的济南二中，17岁的巩俐最大的心愿是能考上一所师范学校。2006年，巩俐来到英国参加电影《迈阿密风云》的首映。不远处的克劳伦斯宫里，58岁的查尔斯正和卡米拉庆祝他们结婚1周年。 此时，泳池里的菲尔普斯正备战北京奥运。在水立方，他一人夺得8枚金牌的传奇，将令世界为之惊叹。21世纪的第1个10年，杨澜访谈录走进这些历史风云人物，以独特视角为您讲述一个人和他的时代。
《
1992年，万宝龙成立文化基金会，每年在全球多个国家与地区颁发万宝龙国际艺术赞助大奖，这也是目前世界上唯一公认的文化艺术赞助大奖。英国王储查尔斯、著名导演文德斯等均在获奖者之列。然而，与其他艺术大奖不同的是，万宝龙赞助的并非仅仅是艺术家，而是艺术资助者。
We've started Mont Blanc de la Couture 20 years ago, and it wasn't for artists. It was for the patrons of the artists.
You know, that's a new concept for the Chinese consumers too.
It's a very new concept. The idea of helping artists who are young, who are struggling to become successful, and I think it's an important one.
Well, what has been some of the stories that touch you personally?
As far as the art,
as far as the art patronage. No, not raising me as the example.
You would be the perfect example.
You know, some other things that you think which is unique for the development or the preservation of Chinese culture, and what makes it unique and different.
We gave the award to Yang Liping, who's famous for minorities. Yes. What she did during the ceremony, she brought some of her students, and they came in traditional minority costume, and they perform their traditional dance, which was very, very touching. If you see in Hong Kong, we gave an award to Jackie Chan, who's very big in charitable contributions, but this was for his arts patronage. And one of our staff members, our marketing director, had gone on a scholarship to study art on his scholarship. And when we gave the award and I announced that, you could see a click like, oh, really? I am doing good. So it's very rewarding, and you have different experiences where you meet different people from different walks of life. We met Jean Wong, who was the first Chinese to go to London School of Ballet, and she brought ballet to Asia. And she had her students dance and see these young girls learn about a beautiful art form and to start developing at a young age, only 4 or 5 years old.
And of course, as a person that is as a very well-traveled person in China, of course, you can see different corners of this country, not just prosperous, mega cities like Beijing and Shanghai or Dalian, but also there are other parts of this country which are less developed, and there are people who are struggling for life. How do you relate to them, and how does this brand relate to the progress of the society as a whole?
I think it's really important for any company, not just luxury brands, to become part of the community. I can remember one experience in Pucheng, in Sichuan province. Mont Blanc sponsored an eye hospital, and Pucheng is a farming country. So we met the 2 farmers who were the first in the program after we paid for the equipment, and the doctors from Hong Kong trained the local doctors to do this eye operation.
And I believe they have never heard the brand at all.
Never heard. They're 65 years old, they're farmers, they're going blind, they have cataracts, but they didn't have the right equipment. So we sponsored the equipment. I was there when they unraveled the bandages, and for the first time in 6 months they could see clearly. And for a farmer, you have to be able to see it. They'll never be our customers. I mean, they're too old to develop into it, but it's something that's right. And it's just that expression of, oh, I can't see, and now I can see it, and how elated they were.
如果我这一生能把我的表演做得很好，我喜欢这个工作做得很好就可以了。
I love to work with engineers because they are really challenged. Vorsprung of technique. The most important is you have to be anti-cyclical if you are encouraging.
杨澜访谈录为您奉献这些激励过我们的瞬间与永恒，与您共同飞跃，去体验一个时代的进步。